Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be joined by our good friend, our next guest, Richard Casper. He's the co-founder and executive director of CreatiVets. How are you doing, Richard?
I'm doing pretty good.
You have some big news to share. We'll talk about that in terms of this world of music that you're now heavily involved in terms of on the radio waves, and you got some really cool news to celebrate there. But let's start CreatiVets. This is a personal journey on your end that it becomes so much bigger. But give us a little bit of that storyline in terms of founding the organization.
Yeah, long story short, I served in the Marine Corps from 2003 to 2007. 2006 and 7, I was in Iraq where my Humvee was struck by 4 separate IEDs, leaving me with a left traumatic brain injury. And my buddy was shot and killed beside me. So when I came home, I did not know how to deal with myself. I didn't know I never heard of PTSD. I'd never heard of TBI really. Like, this was all new to me. And at that point, I didn't even know I had it. So I went down this really bad road, and I luckily discovered art and music at a local community college. I was just trying to take some easy classes, just trying to get away with an easy degree. And that was going to be my life. And then what happened was creative writing and art just opened up my mind to being able to tell my story without actually telling my story. I could put it in a piece of art, or I could put it into a song or in writing, and I could just walk away and let other people take it in, because I'm 6'5" combat Marine. I didn't want to cry in front of people, and I was doing it all the time. And so art and music was my way out. And so that's what led to the idea of using songwriting to heal, because for 4 years, I was involved with art and music, and all of a sudden I started feeling so much better. I went from doing one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher in college because I couldn't even get up in front of class, to now going out and speaking in public and singing songs for people. And that change happened throughout my process. So I look back at my life and I said, well, I didn't go to the VA and get treatment, or I didn't go to another nonprofit and get treatment. I was like, what changed in that time frame? And then I broke it down and I built programs based off of what I went through to help support veterans through the arts and music.
Because obviously on your end, to be able to know the therapeutic power of it, but like you said, to be able to release these stories and share them and kind of, push it out is something that energy, then it heals you, but it also too opens up a conversation that is able to draw people in to be able to share more of your stories. Because I think a big part of it is, and especially with my brother too, serving in the Marines, you want to keep those stories internalized. But that's also too where the damage, it can be self-destructive. Yeah. And so when you push those out and allow people in, art and music has a chance to build a common bond that you can have those conversations, and it's therapy on both ends.
Yeah, and there's words that we don't know that we have inside of us. And so to sit down with a songwriter and just tell them, like, all I have to say is my buddy was shot and killed beside me in Iraq. But then all of a sudden we come out with a song called Angel on My Shoulders because I have a tattoo on my shoulder. All these things that I don't even think about, they see and they pull it out of me because they do this for a living. Songwriters, every single day of the week, they're out writing songs. They're finding 1,000 different ways to write a love song. And so when a veteran comes in and shares in their story, they're taking all these pieces that the veteran never even noticed that they were so close to, and they give it back to them in a way that's like, is this what you're trying to say? And every time it's yes. Typically we'll have a veteran who says, I can't tell my wife this, but this happened to me in Iraq, or I did this in Iraq. And then when they write their song, it's typically about that situation. The first person they text their song to is their wife. They're like, babe, listen to the song I just wrote. So it's a way for them to heal, because on their end, it's repurposing that negative memory into a positive, and it gives them something good to share. It makes it like, it's more exciting than anything, which is kind of weird because sometimes it's the darkest thing in your life, but you're excited to share it for the first time. And on the receiving end, you're just like, I had no idea he went through this, or I had no idea she thought this way, or I had no idea. And all of a sudden you guys are starting to communicate in a whole lot better way. And that's why I included so many relationship songs on the album.
So let's talk about this. Actually, before we get to that, talk about the process, because on your end, you work with veterans, organizations, singer-songwriters. Give us a little bit of a glimpse into your world day to day, and then we'll talk about this album.
Yeah, for our major programs, we have art and music, but for this, focus mainly on the music. We'll fly veterans from anywhere in the country. So we pay for their flight, their food, their housing, and we bring them to Nashville where they're met with another peer-to-peer mentor. So when we first started, for the first 5-6 years, it was just me. I would call the veterans and say, hey, this is Richard. Here's what I went through. What did you go through? They trust me because they know I've been through some crap. And they said, this is what I went through. And I'm that mentor, that battle buddy, the one that helps guide them and say, hey, we're going to tell your story, but it needs to be the one that you need to tell. And so we do a few phone calls before they even get out there. But then when they do get here, that's when we meet in person and we start just sharing more stories. We sit that night and we go to a writer's round. We listen to music so that they could hear storytelling before. We had a lot of veterans who, they're like, I have no idea what I'm going to write about. I have no idea what I'm going to write about. And then they see Lance Carpenter on stage singing a song from the perspective of a tractor. Like there's a song called Rust in Peace that he wrote, and it's him as a tractor. And all of a sudden the veteran's like, I didn't know I could do that. I want to tell the story from my rifle, or I want to tell them. And so it really opens up their eyes to be like, oh, this isn't just ABC. It could be anything. And so they see that the next day now, because we partner with the Grand Ole Opry, that veteran and that mentor get to go to the backstage of the Grand Ole Opry in one of the dressing rooms, and they're met by two pro songwriters, and they get to sit down, and that veteran just pours their heart out, and the mentor helps guide the story, say this is what the song's supposed to be about. And at the end of the day at 4 p.m. we come out of the room and they have their song, they have their story, their life turned into a song, and they're so pumped up about it. Like I said, usually they're texting that little guitar vocal to everyone they know. But the coolest thing, since we've expanded our programming, so typically that night we'll go to another writer round so that they could see the way they listen to music differently now. Because before they're just hearing it, but now they're like, I wonder how they came up with that line. I wonder how they got to this thing. And so now they're really thinking it. It's kind of, we say it's transitioning the warrior brain to the artist brain, thinking like an artist. And then the next day we'll do like a songwriting class for them. So, because we kind of just threw them in the pool and said swim. But now we're like, okay, now here's how you actually, make this stroke, and here's how you do this. And so we teach them the fundamentals. We go to lunch, and at 2 p.m. we go over to the ruckus room and we fully record all 5 songs. So we'll have 5 veterans coming to town. All 5 songs will be recorded by session musicians in town, fully recorded. And each veteran gets to see the other song come to life. And then you see them hugging each other because they're in separate rooms, obviously, and they're hearing each other's songs, and it's emotional. It's crazy. And then that night we'll typically go to the Opry backstage and hang out and talk, and they get to see a show. And the next day they get photos by Jason Myers, portraits, so if they ever need portraits for speaking or anything like that, and then they fly out. So it's a 4-day trip, but it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, think about, to your point, you're taking the darkest moment, or what could be the darkest moment in their life, and they're turning it into light. They're turning it into light for themselves, for their loved one, their families, but also for the world. And then those songs, to be able to put them out. And I think you kind of mentioned it before, but the hardest thing as a songwriter is to understand the more you become vulnerable and open up, the more the audience will engage. And I think for them to open up and share those dark moments, but then turn them into light, is powerful for them, but it's a powerful opportunity for us as the world, as an audience as well, which is exactly where it leads me to this next question of share about this album, because it's amazing what's happening now that you're getting to put it on a huge stage.
Yeah, for the longest time, we weren't able to. It takes a lot to actually put out an album. You need people to administer every song. We've had over 104 songs written from veterans who've flown to Nashville, or us flying to those veterans. And on each song, there's 4 songwriters minimum. So the contracts that have to be put in place with 4 separate writers on 104 songs, when royalties come in quarterly and you trying to disperse them, our small team, there is no way we could do that. So I went on the hunt for a record label or publisher, or someone that would be able to either own our catalog or administer our catalog. And that's when I met with Scott Bruschetta at Big Machine Music. And I try to tell them that there's a gap right now, and there's no veteran music out there. There's no way. When I came home, I actually searched for veteran music. I was looking for people who were veterans that wrote music, because I needed someone to relate to. I needed someone to talk to when I didn't have friends around, which would have been those songs. And I said, this is a huge need, that it's a gap that needs to be filled. And we have the music. We just don't have the distribution. We don't have the stuff in place. We don't have a big enough team. I was like, I would love to partner with you all to do that. And they said, yes. And within 3 months, I think it's probably been only 3 months since we actually met to now that the album's out. That's how fast of a turnaround it was. And so we selected 11 of these 104 songs that we have. And I kind of curated. So there's a couple family songs, a couple spousal songs. There's a couple inspirational songs, and then a couple of just straight up war story songs. Because I want at least one veteran to kind of relate to one of them if they're listening to the whole album. What we found out is most veterans relate to almost all of them. If they have a kid or wife and they've been overseas, they could relate to pretty much every single one of them. But it's just, I mean, this goes from only helping a few hundred veterans to now we're potentially helping millions. There's 20 million veterans alive today, and so our music now being out there on everything, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, every streaming platform there is, YouTube, we have the opportunity to meet those veterans where they're at, and that's in their home. It's like where I was when I was first struggling. If these songs would hit the radio or streaming platform, I would have been like, wait, who wrote that? What is this? And I would look up and I'd see CreatiVets. What is this? I'd search it. All of a sudden, we're pulling these veterans out of the house. There's 20 suicides a day in the veteran space. 14 of those 20 don't seek help. No nonprofit knows how to get to them, but now we have the tools of getting inside their house and pulling them out. And so we've actually seen it even now. Our applications have went up every single day. There's a new application coming in, and it's mainly because they found our music.
Well, every single song has a story. You and I were talking off camera, but the one that really just tugged at my heartstrings right off the bat was stories. And especially, like I said, having my brother who went through a similar experience that you did, you're listening to the song and it brings you to tears. Share a little bit of the story of the song Stories.
Yeah, that one actually I'm on two of these songs, and Stories is one of them. And so I have very intimate details about that song. But we had a veteran named Gino who spent 30 years, something like that, in the military, in the Army, with multiple jobs. I mean, he was like combat camera, he was special forces, he did a lot of stuff. And over the time, he was trying to figure out what to write about. When we call him and we say, let's focus on the one thing that happened to you or that you think about that you need to get off your chest. And he just kept going back to more stories. And then even in Nashville, when we still weren't sure exactly what we're going to write about, I'm driving around with him from different places, talking to him. And I was looking at him, I'm like, man, you know what would relate to me as a veteran? I know this is your song, but I feel like you have so many stories. And there's some that you legitimately can't tell because he did some special forces stuff that he has to keep inside. I was like, you have these that you don't want to tell, but then you have these ones that you can't tell, and it's eating you up, and you want the world to know. I was like, how many other veterans feel this way? What if the song was just called Stories, and we don't have to focus on one, we could focus on all of them? And I was like, and he wanted to write it in a way that would help first responders, police officers, everybody else, because if you hear this song, you can't tell a veteran wrote it. There's one word that says, they call me a hero, but that could be for anybody who's serving. And so in some sort of capacity like that, nurses, doctors, all that. And so he wanted to write it specifically in a way that anybody that had trauma or that went through something that they couldn't talk about could kind of release through this song and understand that they're not alone in this fight, and that they're not the only ones holding in these stories, and they can keep going.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at some of the other ones, The Man I Want to Be, I mean, to your point, you pull on so many different stories and heartstrings. And I think, like you said, the songs were curated for a reason, but at the same time, you cover such a wide range that is really powerful. What do you ultimately hope this leads to? Because I know that for you, this is just the start. This is scratching the surface. You have so many more songs, and to be able now to open the floodgates and really share more of these stories and more of these songs, that's a piece of this. But ultimately, where do you hope this takes you?
Well, I said day one, since we started, to get in the homes of the veterans is the most important thing ever. And so just expanding those partnerships, those relationships. If you've noticed, or if I can't remember if I sent you the article or not, but Alexa now has a utterance for us. And I told them the same thing. I said, because I've been working with Amazon a really long time with their veterans organization, just trying to figure out a way for them to sponsor us on an event or get money for a program that we're doing. And I emailed them when I found out that we had this record deal. And I said, hey, I don't even need money anymore. I mean, we need money, obviously. I was like, I don't need to leverage the money. What I need from you is more important than money. I was like, I need a connection with the Alexas so that we can have veterans who are stuck in their home just say, Alexa, play me music by veterans. And all of a sudden, our album starts playing and it says, hey, here's CreatiVets, a nonprofit helping arts and music through arts and music. So we can legitimately pull those veterans out of their house. And so now we have that in there. And it blows my mind that I can go downstairs right now and tell my Alexa to play music by veterans, and it plays. it's the world's largest company and then the world's largest independent record label, and they came together to help push our music out. And so I could just see this keep going and going, because my ultimate vision is to touch every single veteran that's alive today with our music, just to give them that handout to say, if you want help through our programming, it exists. So everything we do is to get to that veteran. So yeah, I mean, and we're going to go really far. I don't even know now with what this can do already, with some of the stuff that inquiries that we've been getting from different organizations, different people. I'm
like NFL teams. I mean, you're already getting all these, which to me is amazing, because when you know where your heart is, it really does, to me, make a huge difference. And that was kind of the next question anyway, is how do we help? And I think for many in the corporate world, licensing your music is an option now, using it for commercials, for movies. I mean, it really is kind of an endless opportunity to help in so many different ways, but talk about how we can help.
Yeah, when you, like you said, when you license that song into a commercial, into a movie, you know that funding is coming straight back to CreatiVets and the veteran that wrote that. So the veteran still gets writer royalties and some of the publishing royalties too. So you're not only helping us bring more veterans in so that we can produce more music and put it out there and hopefully find that one veteran who's suffering, but you're also helping this veteran who is vulnerable enough to come out and tell their story. And that's in turn going to encourage other veterans to come through our programming, knowing that their story is worth something as well. And so with a lot of companies, that's what I've been saying. You already have it in your marketing budget to license music for your commercials and for everything. How about you do it for a purpose now, and you license our music and it's going straight back into a philanthropy, and now you're giving back and you have great music to push out there. Funding, art supplies. We have a new art facility here in Nashville. We have one in Chicago that we operate out of too. We could always use art supplies, anything for photography, anything for drawing, anything for painting. You can either drop them off or send it. And then obviously money is the key to everything for most things, so we can keep expanding, keep building our team, and keep putting out music.
Well, where do we go? Website, social media? Where would you direct us to get involved?
Yeah, go to creativets.org. And if you want to know, you spell creative and then you just add a TS to the end, because a lot of people get that confused and they do two V's, like two separate words. So I'm always very creative, add a TS.org. It has a link to our music where you can stream it too. So if you click on that link, on the music link, it'll show you a straight drop down of iTunes, Amazon, Spotify. You can just click it and it'll go straight to whatever platform you want to listen to it on.
Well, Richard, congratulations. And like I said, you're just now, to me, scratching the surface of what's possible. And as big as the news is, it's exciting to think that the impact this could have on everyone involved. So thank you for all you and your team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.